I have burned millions of dollars to warm my daughter when she was cold. I am Pablo Escobar, born on December 1st, 1949 in Colombia into a poor family. I began my criminal career by stealing cars and selling smuggled cigarettes. In 1975, after failing university, I ventured into the lucrative drug trade. I was first arrested in 1976. I attempted to bribe the judges to avoid jail unsuccessfully. Consequently, I orchestrated the assassination of the two officers who arrested me. In the 80s, I founded the Medellin cartel in Colombia, dominating the global drug trade. I became one of the richest men in the world. My life of crime was marked by significant milestones. In 1982, I was elected as a deputy to the House of Representatives due to my popularity among the poor, whom I supported with my social works. However, my election was invalidated due to illegal campaign financing. My influence and methods subsequently terrorized the country. Plata o plomo, silver or lead, you were either corrupted or killed. In 1985, while the Supreme Court was considering possible extradition, I collaborated with a left-wing guerrilla group, M19. I paid them to storm the Palace of Justice in Bogota in order to destroy incriminating documents. This attack resulted in the death of half of the Supreme Court judges. In January 1991, I surrendered to Colombian authorities after negotiating a deal that allowed me to stay in a luxurious prison that I had built myself. I continued to run my empire from there. In July 1992, I escaped from the prison upon learning that the government intended to transfer me to a more secure facility. I then became the most wanted man in the country. In December 1993, I was located by the police through a phone call I made to my wife and son. I was gunned down on the roof of a house in Medellin during a shootout with law enforcement. I am proud to have been the king of the most powerful criminal organization in the world, and to have amassed a fortune estimated at $30 billion.
Move forward. Move forward, darling. You can do it.
Step after step, he asks her to move towards him. Until...
When I saw it with my own eyes, I thought, how can I deny it,
What Gerald doesn't know at the time is that the woman in the wheelchair, who stood and walked among the crowd, was actually one of Jones' secretaries, hired for the spectacle.
My personal feelings with Jim Jones were always good ones. I always thought he was handsome. Just watching him, I would just be mesmerized.
Some people see a great deal of God in my body. They see Christ in me, a hope of glory.
But when I got old enough to realize the difference between good and bad, I noticed that all of the meetings weren't happy meetings.
Every Wednesday, Jim Jones offers a different kind of meeting to his followers. He calls them catharsis, the purging of evil.
If you got caught talking to people that were not affiliated with the church, then you would be in trouble for that.
Members, even children, could be called to the front and be hit repeatedly with a paddle, while the entire congregation is made to laugh at you.
I would find myself looking around at all the adults, thinking to myself, you can't think this is okay. You just can't. I was scared to do anything wrong because I was scared I was going to be called up and be beaten.
As the Parks family is getting ready to follow Jim Jones to Guyana, Tracy is deeply troubled.
I can't figure out for the life of me why my parents went when the red flags were here.
I want to give you more than I have. I want you to be greater than I am. And if you don't want to go this route, then go to hell where you want to, but don't bother me.
I remember landing in a little plane on the Port Kaituma airstrip that's not very far from Jonestown.
As Tracy gets off the plane with her family, the air is so thick and so hot, she can hardly breathe. The family now has to board a tractor to be taken to Jonestown.
When we came up on them gates, they were standing there with guns. And at that moment, I knew I had just entered the gates of hell.
I said, I feel like I'm making the biggest mistake of my life.
Right away, Tracy and her family are stripped from all of their belongings, including their passports. Then, Tracy is separated from her parents.
They told my parents right then and there, she's going to be staying in the kids' area and you guys are going to be going to your own cottage. I was devastated.
According to Jim Jones, family bonds are selfish. But the truth is, he wants to turn family members against one another. And the best way to do that is to isolate them. Already, Tracy's father Gerald knows he's made a mistake. The next morning, while walking around the grounds, Gerald runs into his own cousin.
And she said, "How do you like Jonestown?" I said, "I don't."
Yesterday, news broke about a case from 2019 where a man in Missouri found a baby in his mother's freezer after she passed away. Back in 2019, this case made major news headlines because there were so many unanswered questions, and Adam Smith, the man who found the baby, was very confused as to why his mother had a baby in her freezer for over 37 years. We were given an update about the autopsy. The results showed that the baby's cause of death was not a homicide. And we were also informed that back in 2022, a concerned citizen had called in saying that they believed that they were the twin sibling of the deceased infant. DNA testing came back and showed that the deceased infant was a half-sibling to the person who called in 2022 and also someone else that lives in the area. This news made everyone even more confused, like how did someone in 2022 call in thinking they were the sibling? I found some information that explains all of this. This case is very confusing, but after Barbara Smith passed away, her family uncovered a lot of secrets. I want to start off by saying Adam and his sister knew that their mother Barbara had given a baby up for adoption years ago. So a couple weeks after Barbara passed away, Adam received a phone call from his aunt, and she said that her daughter had recently taken a 23andMe and found out that she had cousins that lived in the area. Well, one lived in Florida and one lived in Illinois. So the family communicated and reached out, and they found out that Shannon was the older sibling that they knew about that had been adopted, but Laura was a younger sibling that had been adopted, and they don't know how their mother was pregnant, and they didn't know, but she was, because she was the younger sibling. But Laura also received some information from her adoption agency that gave information about Barbara and her father. Barbara had 7 pregnancies, and the family only knows of like 3 or 4. So I will let you guys read this, because if I try to read it and explain it to you, you are going to get very confused. But basically, Barbara had a lot of pregnancies that no one knew about, so the baby in the freezer was more than likely hers. Also read that the family believes that it could have been her first pregnancy from when she was very young. Laura said that when she got that adoption letter, she researched information about her mother, and when she did, the article about the baby being found in the freezer is what showed up.
They just released the autopsy report for Alexi Treviso's baby.
The autopsy is out, so to help us work through all this tonight, joining us, Dr. Michelle Dupree. Dr. Dupree, great to see you tonight. Thank you so much. Cause of death, entrapment. I've never seen that before. Manner of death, homicide. What do those words mean to you, Dr. Dupree?
Well, the entrapment is, as you would expect, it means that the baby was in a position that they were trapped and couldn't get out. So in the trash can, and most likely suffocated because they were entrapped. And of course, the baby didn't get in there by themselves, so that would be a homicide.
Now, let's take a look at some more findings from this autopsy, which will be very, very significant. Live born male newborn, aerated lungs, air in stomach, no decomposition. Tell us a little bit about that, what that means, because I think part of the defense here will be that this child was not born alive, that this was a stillbirth, or perhaps died very quickly after taking 1 or 2 breaths.
Right. The most important thing for us to determine in cases like this is whether or not the child was born alive or not. And one of the ways that we test that is to determine if there was air in the lungs.
Soccer coach accused of drugging and raping at least 10 children.
When we got to these soccer fields off Glass Lane, we didn't come to watch these men play.
Does this guy look familiar to you?
We wanted to find out about a man who once did.
Do you know who that is?
We showed people at this tournament this picture. It's 63-year-old Camilo Hurtado Campos.
Disturbing videos and pictures on Camilo Campos' phone after he left it at the Marco's Pizza restaurant on Mallory Lane. An employee there went through the phone to try to identify its owner. That employee contacted police.
Franklin police say detectives found hundreds of videos and photos on his phone raping at least 10 unconscious boys between 9 and 17 years old. Campos has lived in Franklin for 20 years. In the Hill Estates neighborhood, but more recently on Glass Lane. Franklin police say Campos was a regular at school playgrounds where he approached kids and recruited them to his soccer team. After gaining their trust, he invited them to his home where he drugged and raped them.
Crime Babe, if your child ever been around him, contact this number.
We're told that because the victims were so heavily drugged, they may not even have realized that they were victims.
I just think that it's sick that he was over there raping and drugging children for over 20 years and no one suspected or arrested him. Drop a comment and let me know your opinion on this case. And as always, hit that follow button, Crime Babe.
Is this what you're talking about, cleaning up the carpet? I mean, there's everywhere.
There's the carpet floor was like this when you moved, not the junk one over there.
Left being driven by a black male who's involved in the disturbance, has an expired paper tag on it.
Handprints of shit all over the entire room. Your feet just stick to all the shit in there. That's the nastiest house I've ever been in. She's like, we're trying to clean up. You go in this room, and it looks like you just put shit all over your hands and like all over the place.
Can you go ahead?
Go ahead and put your hands on your back for me.
Can I ask what's going on? All right, right now you are under arrest for child sexual assault. Okay, we're not going to talk about it while we're here. We'll talk about it back at the police department, okay?
A recently released affidavit reveals some horrific details that went on in the House of Horrors in Stillwater, Oklahoma. Just a trigger warning ahead of time, this does involve severe child abuse. If you have a weak stomach, I would recommend maybe skipping this case. With that being said, I am going to try to keep it TikTok friendly, so I will be leaving out any severe details that might get this video taken down. On March 1st of 2023, police arrived to the home of 35-year-old Stephen Kittle after they had received reports that he had possibly been abusing his children. Stephen was living in a trailer home with his mother, 59-year-old Robin Kittle, his wife, 26-year-old Lindsay Pratt, and his 3 children. When police arrived to the home, they stated that Robin Kittle had answered the door with an 18-month-old child behind her. Police stated that they immediately noticed the child's hands, hair, and face were covered in dried feces. Once police entered the house, they discovered the horrific conditions that both children and animals were living under. Some of the body cam footage has been released, and in those clips you can hear the officers just gagging and describing how absolutely disgusting the house is. In the affidavit, officers described some of the following horrific details that they encountered in the house. They stated that from where they stood on the porch, they could smell a very strong odor of urine and feces. When they were actually inside the house, they had to frequently walk outside to get some air. They noted that inside of the home was 6 dogs and 1 cat that appeared to be very dirty, and it was just the 18-month-old inside. The other 2 children were not in home at the time. There was no flooring installed in the living room, and there were dark spots all over the floor that appeared to be caused by animals defecating. The areas that did have carpet were so saturated with urine and feces that the officers' boots would squish down and stick to the carpet when they walked. When they walked into the children's room, they discovered that the walls were covered in feces. They described that there was handprints and drawings all over the walls in the children's own feces. They also stated that there were fly and cockroach traps everywhere that were just full of dead bugs, and that bags of food were hanging from the ceiling, which was later determined to be done so that rats and bugs wouldn't get into their food. Now, these were some of the things that they only discovered after a quick walkthrough of the house, so let's talk about some of the things that they discovered after they interviewed some of the family members. Also, just really quickly before I go forward, I would like to clarify that the body cam footage is from March 1st of 2023. I was under the impression that it was from June because that's when they released it and that's when they arrested the mother and the wife. Why they waited several months to arrest the mother and the wife, I'm not sure. But to clarify, the body cam footage is from March 1st of 2023, which is the exact same day that Stephen Kittle got arrested. It is being reported that Stephen was often responsible for the care of the children, but most of the days he spent playing video games and sleeping. Now, let's start with the most horrific thing that happened. Stephen confessed to S-ing the 4-year-old child multiple times and would sometimes do it in front of the 1-year-old child. It was reported that the children were locked in the room for at least 20 hours a day, every single day, and they were locked in from the outside. The 18-month-old child was confined to a crib with limited interaction for almost 24 hours a day. The children never had any toys or comfort items, and that is because Stephen took them away from them as a form of punishment. The children had not received any medical attention for several years, and when the children were taken to the hospital, they were found to be extremely malnourished. The 18-month-old even had a dead cockroach removed from its ear. Now, although Stephen was immediately arrested on March 1st and charged with the essay of a child, Robin and Lindsay were not arrested until June 21st of 2023, and they were all charged with child neglect, including Stephen. I cannot seem to find anything on why Robin and Lindsay were arrested several months after the fact, but if for some reason anyone in the comments can figure it out, please leave a comment below so that we can all be on the same page, because I just don't get it. Stephen Kittle is facing essay charges of a child and child neglect charges, and if he is found guilty, he will be facing 3 life sentences. And I'm sure everyone will be so shocked to hear this, but he has pled not guilty so far. Robin and Lindsay have been charged with child neglect, and if they are found guilty, they will be facing life sentences. Neither one of them have lawyers as of yesterday. The next hearing is scheduled for the middle of August, and there are more details being released every single day, so I'm sure there will be a part 2 to this video. And a very important question that I've seen a lot in the comments is what happened to the children and the animals. According to several articles that I read, the children were taken into the custody of the Department of Human Services, and 3 dogs were submitted to animal welfare. I cannot figure out what happened to the cat or the other 3 dogs. I'm not sure if the articles are incorrect, but I hope all of the animals are in some kind of care.
Just wait for me right here, okay? You don't have anything?
I'm looking at your eyes. Sorry, sir.
What?
I'm looking at your eyes.
Why?
Because you look pretty handsome.
As soon as the officer realizes something might be up with the IDs, Lydia starts to smile and stare directly at his eyes before telling him how handsome he is. Obviously, this is just a trick to try and get out of the position she's put herself in. A trick that isn't going to work on this officer.
Hey, I'm Officer Smith, Bentonville Police Department.
Nice to meet you, Mr. Smith.
I've never heard that before in Travis Stop. I appreciate that. Hey, so I'm just stopping you for improper lane use.
Sorry, I was on the phone.
You're on the phone?
I'll be honest.
Okay. Who are you on the phone with?
My baby daddy. I'll show it to you, too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Zachary?
Yeah.
How much do you have to drink tonight?
Only 1 drink.
Just 1 drink?
Yep. Yes,
Final
sir.
answer?
Miller.
A Miller Lite?
Yes. I won't lie to you, a Miller Lite.
That's all you've had?
Yes, sir. You can ask Zachary.
I don't really want to talk to Zachary.
I know you don't, but I'm just saying.
Okay.
In just this first minute of conversation, 2 things become clear immediately. Brooke has definitely had more than 1 beer to drink, and how well she and the officer seem to be getting along.
You're making me giggle. I'm sorry.
He makes me giggle too. It's okay.
Okay. I snore. I'm from Huntsville.
We're supposed to be professional.
I'm from Huntsville. It's not going to make me snort.
All right, stop laughing because you're making me laugh.
I'm not.
Right? Seriously.
I'm giggling. I'm
all
sorry.
Right, this is a serious deal. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're smiling. I can't help it.
All right, stop.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Unfortunately, despite all the jokes, Brooke failed all the sobriety tests and was put under arrest.
How much you've actually had a drink?
I've had 2 Millers.
2 Millers now? That's it?
Yes, sir. You can call Mitchell, the manager.
Okay. Well, hey, go ahead and put your hands on your back for me, okay?
Yeah.
After a search of her car, which turned up nothing but a loose car seat, she was driven back to the police station where the sparks continued to fly.
I'm with you. Let's go over here.
Oh my God, is there a dog?
There is a dog.
Where?
He's over there. Over here. His name is Kolyak.
Kolyak?
That's my dog.
Is that your dog? What's his name?
His name is Coach.
Coach? You're making me giggle. I'm sorry.
He makes me giggle too. It's okay.
Okay. I snore. I'm from
Sorry.
Huntsville.
We're supposed to be professional.
I'm from Huntsville. It's not going to make me snort. Can I get high school with you?
I don't think so. Where'd you go to high school?
Bentonville.
Yeah, not me.
Where'd you go?
Indiana. Valparaiso, Indiana.
Where in Indiana?
Valparaiso.
I was raised from Bluefield.
Really?
Yeah.
Note that despite the obvious chemistry, both Brooke and the officer have remained professional and are continuing to move on with the investigation. The officer had Brooke take a blood alcohol test where she blew 0.14%, almost twice the legal limit. Brooke still spent the night in jail to sober up and had her license suspended temporarily. But this interaction shows how respect and professionalism can make an investigation much easier. It's just unfortunate that this cop didn't meet Brooke at a bar. Maybe things would have ended with a night at his place instead of the jail.
Welcome to Criminal TikTok, and this chart will determine what type of crime one should commit based on their morals and their intelligence, with the top right corner being the highest for each. Criminals with high morals will often choose a bank heist because it's only stealing from large banks and people don't actually lose any money. As well, it takes a lot of planning and execution to pull off. Criminals with slightly less intelligence would probably choose something like an insurance fraud, because you're taking money from an insurance, no one's directly getting hurt usually, but it requires less planning and foresight than a bank heist. Alright, tax evasion requires the least planning and foresight as it's the most common, but it's still morally high because you're not directly harming anyone. For those who are less moral, they definitely choose something like an MLM scheme, which is basically a way of scamming money from numerous people. Since you're directly harming people, it's definitely less moral than a bank heist, but still requires a big deal of intelligence. Finally, people with moderate intelligence but also moderate morals would probably choose something like fake advertising. People lose out on their own money, but generally it's not a lot and it doesn't destroy someone's life. Make sure to follow for part 2 of this list. I created this chart to show what type of crime one should commit based on their morals and their intelligence, with the top left being the highest for each. Alright, for those with less morals but also with not super high intelligence, it's probably shoplifting. It's actually pretty easy to pull off, and you aren't directly harming someone or completely destroying their livelihood, but if you are robbing from small businesses, you are hurting them directly. Larger businesses, not as much. For those with no morals but high intelligence, it'd have to be serial murder. This is because it requires an intense amount of planning and execution. However, you need no morals because you are literally not just destroying someone's life, you are ending it. Alright, this is supposed to say burglary, but burglary is less planning intensive than serial murder. However, it is destroying someone's life and you're probably harming them, especially if they live low income and have no insurance. Alright, last we got assault. This is just not very planning intensive, but it still is harming someone. Make sure to follow if you enjoyed.
Alright guys, let's talk about disgraced piece of shit demonic ex-doctor Larry Nassar, who was recently stabbed multiple times in a Florida prison. So before I get into all that, let me tell you a little background about this piece of shit. He was convicted for over 100 rapes, sexual assaults, battery, molestation on over 100 women over the course of 20 years. And these women were part of Team USA Gymnastics, some of them even placing gold and silver in the Olympics. The way he would silence his victims was by saying, if you do anything or cause any heat towards me, you'll never make it in this field. I'll get you shut down everywhere you go. You'll never make it to the Olympics. You'll never have a career with Team USA. So I find it kind of funny what happened to him. So I talked to my friend Cornbread, who's in the same prison as him. And he said his cell door was accidentally opened. And since he's in PC, he's not supposed to be around a general population inmate. And that inmate directly beelined it towards him, stabbed him multiple times in the chest, and then as he was running for his life, hit him in the back a few more times. Blood everywhere. But the convicts were making noise, kicking the doors, because this guy is screaming for his life. Help me, help me. The convicts are banging on the tables, banging on their cell doors, as he's screaming for the people that took the same oath as him to save his life. It's almost poetic justice. You're getting silence, running for your life, begging the same people who you just completely dishonored their oath to save your life. You see, in prison, it doesn't matter if it's 5 years, 10 years. Eventually, when it's your time to get hit, you're going to get hit. It doesn't matter if you're in protective custody, max custody, death row. When it's time, it's time. So in this case, I don't know if it was a hit that was put on him or an inmate that wanted a badge of honor. But after 5-10 years go by and the news media isn't covering your case anymore. They aren't coming to the prison to interview you and make the warden have to clean it up and put all the troublemakers away. Basically, the only people that remember what happened are the convicts, the officers, and the victims. So I don't know the status of his health, as I can't find any information on that. But what I do know is if he does survive, what's going to happen now is they'll send him to another prison and he'll sit in that PC cell just waiting for that accident to happen in 5-10 years, where they'll finally finish that job on that piece of shit. Those are some strong women. Respect to y'all. Stay out. Stay free. Ugh.
Take a shot, gonna live until the sun comes up. Going out, going to shore. Take a shot.